Cats are weird. Think about it for a second. Humans have domesticated dozens of animals over the past 10,000 years. We bred wolves into chihuahuas. We turned wild boars into pink farm pigs. We took giant aurochs and shrank them into dairy cows. We broke horses to ride on their backs across continents. Every domesticated animal on Earth has been reshaped by us in some obvious, dramatic way. Except one. Cats. Your cat sitting on your laptop right now is genetically almost identical to its wild ancestor. It still hunts the same way. It still moves the same way. It still looks at you with the exact same expression a wild cat would give a confused human 10,000 years ago. Which raises a strange question. How did cats become part of human life at all? Because unlike every other domesticated animal, humans didn't tame cats. Cats walked into civilization on their own terms. And honestly, they never fully surrendered. To understand how this happened, you have to go back to one of the biggest turning points in human history. Around 10,000 years ago, in a region called the Fertile Crescent, humans did something they had never done before. They started farming. For hundreds of thousands of years, humans had lived as nomads, constantly moving in search of food. But agriculture changed everything. Suddenly, humans stayed in one place. They built villages. They harvested wheat and barley. And for the first time in history, humans started storing massive amounts of grain. That single invention, the grain store, accidentally created the conditions for cats to enter our lives. Because grain attracts mice. Lots of mice. Picture an early farming village in the Fertile Crescent. The houses are made of mud brick. The fields stretch toward the horizon. And inside every storage room, hidden in the dark, mice are multiplying by the thousands, eating through humanity's first food surplus. This was a disaster. But it was also an opportunity, and someone was watching. At the edges of these villages, in the dry grasslands and scrublands, lived a small predator called the African wildcat, Felis libica. It looked almost exactly like a modern tabby. Slightly leggier, slightly more muscular, but unmistakably a cat. And unlike most wildcats, this particular species had one unusual trait. It was slightly more tolerant of humans than its relatives. Not friendly. Not affectionate. Just tolerant. And tolerance was enough. Because the moment grain stores started filling with mice, those wildcats had an opportunity that no predator had ever encountered before. A concentrated, predictable, endlessly renewing food supply, generated entirely by humans. The bold wildcats crept closer. The aggressive ones got chased off. The terrified ones stayed far away and got nothing. But the slightly tolerant ones, the ones who could ignore the strange upright apes nearby, found themselves living next to an all-you-can-eat buffet. And humans noticed something incredible. The mice were disappearing. Now here's the important part. Humans didn't capture these cats. They didn't drag them into their homes. They didn't selectively breed them for cuteness. The cats just stayed. As long as there were mice, the cats had reason to be there. As long as the cats killed mice, humans had reason to leave them alone. It was the world's first mutually beneficial roommate situation, and it happened without either species really planning it. Archaeologists have found extraordinary evidence of how early this relationship began. On the island of Cyprus, in a grave dating back about 9,500 years, researchers discovered a human buried alongside a cat. Cyprus has no native wildcats, which means humans intentionally brought this cat across the sea by boat. That cat mattered enough to someone that they carried it across open water and buried it beside a person. This is thousands of years before the pyramids. Thousands of years before written language. Cats were already part of human life. And then there's the genetic evidence, which is almost unbelievable. Modern house cats and African wildcats are so genetically similar that scientists sometimes struggle to tell them apart. Compare this to dogs and wolves, which are genetically related but visually and behaviorally worlds apart. Dogs were reshaped completely. Cats were barely touched. Your cat is essentially a wildcat that agreed to live indoors. Eventually, this quiet partnership reached a civilization that would change everything. Ancient Egypt. The Egyptians took the cat's pest control role and elevated it into something almost cosmic. Cats protected grain. Grain meant survival. Survival meant divinity. The Egyptians worshipped a goddess named Batet, often depicted with the head of a cat. Killing a cat in ancient Egypt, even by accident, could be punished by death. Cats were mummified, buried with jewelry, and mourned by families who shaved their eyebrows as a sign of grief. For thousands of years, Egyptian cats lived as protected residents of homes, temples, and farms. And from Egypt they spread. Sailors took them onto trade ships to control rats. Cats sailed across the Mediterranean, into Europe, into Asia, eventually across every ocean on Earth. They went wherever humans went, not because we forced them, but because the deal kept working. We had food storage. They had work. And here's where things get really strange. For a long time, scientists assumed cats had been gradually domesticated like every other animal. Now researchers think something different. Cats were never truly domesticated. They are what biologists call commensals, animals that live alongside humans for mutual benefit without ever fully surrendering their independence. Every other domesticated animal was reshaped by us. Cats reshaped us. We built our homes around their hunting routes. We adjusted our schedules around their sleep cycles. We bought tiny beds and tiny toys and tiny bowls for an animal that, biologically speaking, considers itself our equal. And cats know exactly what they're doing. There's a fascinating piece of research showing that adult cats almost never meow at each other. In the wild, adult cats communicate through scent, body language, and the occasional hiss. The meow is something cats develop specifically for humans. It's not natural cat language. It's a learned tool, fine-tuned over thousands of years to manipulate human attention. Your cat meowing at you for food is using a sound it invented just for our species. There is something almost insulting about how good cats are at this. And then there's the famous aloofness. Unlike dogs, which descended from pack animals with deep hierarchical instincts, cats descended from solitary hunters. A wildcat doesn't need a leader. It doesn't need a group. It hunts alone, sleeps alone, and survives alone. That instinct never left them. This is why cats don't obey. They negotiate. A dog wants to please you. A cat wants to know what's in it for them. Neither approach is wrong. They're just two completely different evolutionary strategies meeting the same human living room. And maybe that's what makes cats so quietly fascinating. Dogs joined us. They crossed frozen landscapes beside us, slept by our fires, hunted with us, and tied themselves emotionally to human bonding hormones. Cats did something different. Cats let us in. They watched humans build a new world of grain and walls and warmth, decided it suited them, and walked through the door without ever pretending to be anything other than what they always were. Small, independent, slightly mysterious predators who simply found us useful. And we found them useful right back. Over thousands of years, this quiet agreement spread to every corner of the planet. Today, there are around 600 million domestic cats on Earth, descendants of a small population of African wildcats that crept toward firelight when humans first started farming. They have changed almost nothing about themselves, and yet they have shaped human emotion, art, religion, internet culture, and daily life in ways no one could have predicted. And tonight, somewhere nearby, a small predator with golden eyes is probably sleeping in a sunbeam or sitting in a window watching the world. Inside that quiet, soft, purring animal is the same instinct that once stalked mice through Egyptian grain stores. The same patience that crossed the Mediterranean on wooden ships. The same independence that never quite agreed to be owned. Your cat is not really a pet in the way dogs are pets. Your cat is a guest. A guest that has stayed for 10,000 years, eats your food, ignores your rules, sleeps on your warmest blanket, and somehow still makes you feel honored to host them. And that, in the end, might be the strangest and most beautiful accident in the entire history of human-animal companionship.